Tank represents this notion, this social mobility, this idea that any of us could have a great idea and with some hustle, get connected into the right part of the scene, execute, boom, have a business and be a big, a big success. And that was one of the things that I found so incredible, was that it wasn't just aspirational in the way that everyone wants to drive what Kim and Kanye are driving, but it felt doable, it felt attainable, and that it was a product of hustle. And that is, I think, the embodiment of the American way. And so what was fun was, on exactly Halloween night last year, I was at a party. I was dressed as a bottle of sriracha, chasing my kids around a party, and there was a guy next to me dressed as a ninja, chasing his kids. And I'm like, hey, I'm Chris. You kind of do the dad handshake. What's your name? Clay. Clay, what do you do? I'm the EP on Shark Tank. I'm like, oh, no shit, I'm Chris Sacca. He's like, I know who you are. He's like, I saw you mix it up with Cuban and Damon. And from there, he said, would you ever want to come on and do Shark Tank? I was like, no, dude, no, that's not what I do for a living. You guys do kitchen gadgets and end caps at Bed Bath & Beyond. We build companies. And he said, well, what could we fix about the show? What could we do better? And if you ever want to reel somebody in, if you ever want to reel an investor or an entrepreneur in, you just bring that in, like ask them for their opinion, ask them to shoot their mouth off on what they would do to make something better. And it's irresistible.
Product Hunt can do better. I'm just kidding.
No, it's exactly right. These guys, Clay's like, well, why don't you come by the studio and give us some ideas? We'd love to hear some of your feedback. And he's like, and by the way, we got all the Breaking Bad props here. And I'm a sucker for that. I got to see the original Ghostbusters car and stuff. And meanwhile, I met with all the Sony people. Then I go to ABC and talk to them about what I would do differently with the show. Then I'm at Mark Burnett's house. And before you know it, by the end of that meeting, they made me an offer to be on the show. And I'm like, oh, shit, I was just being interviewed. So that said, it's been a thrill. I'm really excited to be doing it.
And it will be a success for you, your involvement with the show, if what happens? What's your goal in getting involved?
Well, so far, I think it already has been a success. I got started in this business when it was taking pitches from 3 founders at Brick House Cafe over on Brannan in San Francisco. I mean, it was super fun back in the early day. It would just be, you think about when I got into angel investing, 2005, 2006, that was kind of the rise of the engineer and the fall of the MBA. And so it wasn't business plans. Y Combinator definitely spearheaded this movement to where coders could start companies. And what was great about that time was the conversations were as sincere as they ever could be. And everyone was just so excited about the fact that it didn't cost millions of dollars to start writing the code for your company. And so that was a really fun time to be alive and be in this mix, meeting young teams just out of college, irrational exuberance about what they were capable of building now that there were no obstacles in their way. And so sitting with teams like that and chewing on product ideas was fantastic. Along the way, some of those companies start to grow up. They raise more and more money. I raise more and more money. I have these big funds to start buying huge pieces of companies. CEOs get hired and fired, and board members get knives out. And the stakes are amazing. And I'm very grateful for how I was able to navigate that later stage stuff. But the politics of that end up being a huge distraction from product and from building. And so for me, the successful part of Shark Tank has been, I've already been able to dive back in with some teams that are just building stuff again, where we're not talking to an entire cap table full of late stage investors. I'm not dealing with public earnings calls or anything. We're just making a product better. And that's reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. And I think it's rekindled my passion for startups.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take some questions from the community. Okay, so Andrew wants to know, so you're obviously well known for being early in Uber, Twitter, Instagram, many others. What do you think separates you kind of as an investor? What's your core competence? What lends you to do what you do so well?
Fashion.
Come on.
The shirts. So no, I think it started a little bit by accident. In the early days, how do I put this? In the early days, I didn't really have the money to be an investor. I had kind of a few $100,000, which is a lot of money anywhere on the planet. But to be an angel investor in Silicon Valley, that is not enough money. Meaning I couldn't really afford to have a broad portfolio of startups to invest in. And so the minimum startup check is usually $25K. Well, for me, that was extremely immaterial. If I was writing a $25K check to a company, I needed to get that money back. And so without even really being consciously aware of it, I invested $25K in Twitter, and then I just started showing up at Twitter every day. Jack didn't even really want me there. I just invited myself to 164 South Park and tried to find ways to be helpful because I really, really needed that money. I couldn't just kind of vanity toss it around. And so I think by sheer necessity, the first companies I got involved with built this mode that we operate in now, which is I only invest in things where I think I can be personally, materially helpful. And I want to get involved in your project if I think I can move the needle and increase the likelihood of success by a material degree, because that's when I get confident I'll get my money back and more. And so that was the mode I built, was just like, here's some money, now I'm gonna sit in your office. And that was just that's a different approach than a lot of guys take, I think. But that was a really great way to start up this career. And I think that's what led to so many of my early investments paying off such huge dividends.
And how do you just have a knack for surrounding yourself with people like Jack and Ev and Travis from Uber and just, some of the best founders? How do you think, is it something you see in people differently? How do you evaluate these people? Or just
so that's got to be mutual, right? So you can't just surround yourself with people without them opting into it. So it's two ways. So one is, you have to identify those people
before they're big.
Hopefully before they're big, right? I mean, it's great. You could wait in line to talk to Stuart Butterfield now, but you're going to pay $3 billion to get involved. Probably more by now, actually. So, so hopefully you meet those people early. Now, here's the thing. Like, I actually think the real movers, the people who are making stuff happen, aren't that hard to find sometimes. They're just different, right? I talk about, Kevin Systrom back when he was coding solo on Instagram still, even pre-Mikey. That dude, when you would talk to him about Instagram, he would say, without any hint of irony or anything in his face or doubt, he would just say, and so when we get to 50 million users, that's when we'll launch this new type of filter. And you're just like, dude, it's you sitting in a co-working space, and you're literally talking about getting to 50 million users. But in his voice was so much inevitability that he was definitely going to get there. And so you talked to Travis in the earliest days of Uber, and it was clear Uber was going to take over the world. It would change everything. You talked to Ev in the earliest days of Twitter. And I don't know if we knew that Twitter would be on every television screen, in every newspaper every day, that it would be moving markets, et cetera. But he always knew it was huge. Same with Jack. They always knew it was going to be big. And so there's something about founders who, when you sit down with them and they just know they're working on something bigger than the rest of us, they can see into the future, and you want to go ahead and jump on that train before it leaves the station. That's the sense of some of these big founders. Now, that said, you have to get them to like you too. And it can't just be social, right? I mean, it's sure I can put back shots of Jaeger with anybody, but that isn't the hook to build a long-term startup building relationship. And so instead, you have to put yourself in a position to be helpful. You have to size up, what are they good at? What are they not good at? What do they not yet realize they're not good at? And you have to start throwing your hat in the ring. Can I help you redesign your front page? Can I help you think about the conversion funnel? Can I attract employees number 3, 4, and 5 here? Can I start lining up a syndicate to do a Series A or a seed extension? Can I introduce you to a commercial partner? Can I get you to a content team that's got some good content to put in there? Can I handhold you through your first few PR conversations so that when you go to launch and you're on TechCrunch and you're talking to these people, that you don't shoot yourself in the foot? Can I give you a pep talk about the travails of being a founder and just admitting that, we all talk about how glossy and awesome it is on the front page, but the reality is it gets really nasty and depressing, and there are some huge life moments along the way and inflection points that it's nice to have some counseling for. And so these are all the things that I think I do that add value to those people, such that those people want me involved in their project, and they hopefully in the end add value not just to my portfolio, but to my life experience.
Yeah, in the startup podcast, Shane wants to know, you were kind of immortalized. Your story of Travis and your dad playing Nintendo Wii, was immortalized. It was an incredible story. And then afterwards, there was this Forbes cover that kind of mentioned a bit about your relationship with Uber and Travis. What can you say about how that's changed since, or do you think you're super, you kind of specialize in the early stage, and then as it scales, you kind of focus differently, or how do you think about that?
Well, I almost see those as two different questions. Yes, like Travis and I butt heads. We did, since that was the basis of our friendship from the earliest days, is we would stay up and argue till all hours, sometimes like till 8 hours in a hot tub. Travis can be in a hot tub in human amount of time. And so That's just the nature of my style. I'm in your face smash mouth. So if I think the page is broken, if I think our communications are weak, I'm there. There are definitely more laissez-faire VCs and it works well for them. But if I put money in a game, I'm in your face and I'm talking about it all the time. I'm very, very often wrong. If you look at our portfolio returns, I'm probably wrong more often than I'm right. It's just when I'm right, I'm really, really right. And so I think that's one thing, is that the nature of personality fit is important. I have a founder, John Herring, over at Lookout, who I think, I haven't checked in on this in the last year, but there was a time where Dave Wyden at Khosla would call him 2 times a day, every day, to check in. And John Herring loved that. They had this incredibly cooperative daily interaction as a venture investor and a CEO. There are other guys who that would drive crazy if they had that much intervention from their VC and be like, look, check in with me at the board meeting. I don't want to hear from you otherwise. And so I think that's one element of the style. And for those who are out there founding companies, you got to size up. Is this the kind of investor I want? Somebody who's going to be in my face and pushing me and challenging me on this kind of stuff.
And what, Aaron wants to know, what do you think is the biggest mistake first-time founders make?
The biggest mistake first-time founders make. Right now, I would say not everybody is a founder. I think that's one of the challenges, is that I think anyone is capable of being a founder on paper, but not everybody actually has founding in their gut. It's very fashionable and attractive right now to be a startup founder. And so I think we see, like the magazine covers are loaded with them. You see people with big numbers next to their names and all these fancy lists, and they get to date high profile people, et cetera. There's a real allure to being a founder right now. But what I see are people who are drawn to the concept of being a founder, but not the grit and what the reality of being a founder. And so I think that's the biggest mistake right now, is people need to do a really, truly honest assessment. The very best founders, I'll tell you an example from early days with Evan Williams. So in the early days of Twitter, so Twitter had launched, Jack was running it, and Evan and I were exploring co-investing in deals together. We didn't know whether they're going to found a venture fund or just 2 separate venture funds that partnered up, but we started taking pitches from people together. And so some folks would come to 164 South Park, is where we did it, and we'd listen to their pitch and they'd leave, and I'd say, Ev, what do you think? And he's like, I like it, but I like Twitter so much more. And then we'd hear another pitch and he's like, I like it, but man, I love Twitter. And after about a month of this, he's just like, dude, I can't take it. I have to go work at Twitter. He had the personality of being just intensely, intensely focused and needed to be just working on one specific project. I, in contrast, love working on so many different things at once, love learning all these different industries, love having dozens of irons in the fire. And so there's a real contrast in styles there, but that's what comes to mind.
How should people evaluate whether they are a founder CEO or whether they should, be joining someone else's thing or being an investor?
Yeah, I think it comes from so deep down that they can't help but be working on that thing. So if you find yourself saying, I just want to start something, and then you're kind of shopping around for an idea and you're looking for someone else to validate that idea. Hey, VC, does that sound like a good idea? Does that sound like something that's not going to get you there? If instead, deep in your gut, you want to start something, and then you find something that feels so obvious to you, that feels so big, and yet when you talk to people about it and they don't get it, it stirs up in you this emotion of, they don't get it, do they? This is going to be so big, it is inevitable. And and I can tell when that is tipped for somebody, that when they're talking to me, they're not even trying to convince me, and they're also not trying to convince themselves. They just know, right? So for years, I spent all this time trying to convince people that Twitter was going to be a big deal. I would do like panel discussions and speeches and be like, hey guys, and I'm talking, this is like 2008, 2009, like Twitter, you should pay attention to Twitter. Hey conference, you should invite Ev and Jack. They're going to be incredible speakers at your conference, and they can talk about how Twitter is changing the world. And nobody really cared. And at one point I finally was just like, you know what, fuck it. Like, I'm not here to convince you anymore. I'm just going to buy all the goddamn stock. And so that is the kind of attitude I look for in a founder. A true founder with an F is just somebody who's like, sure, I can practice the storytelling and be enough of a storyteller to recruit other people to help me in this mission. But at the end of the day, they're not convincing themselves, and they're not here to convince you. They just know it's going to work.
Mm-hmm. And that the Twitter buying was one of the most legendary investing moves. That in your faceness that you described earlier is kind of an instinct. is that both your biggest strength and your biggest weakness? And how do you know when to, kind of double down on that or when to let up?
I mean, I don't necessarily. It's my most candid trait, I think. So if I see something that's not right, I'm going to say it out loud. I have no filter for that. Mazio can attest. So if I just can't help myself, and I think Lowercase has benefited by not having a bunch of partners, by not, so Lowercase has two investors, myself and Matt Mazio. And for most of the time, it was just me, and I brought Matt on a few years ago. He's been fantastic, but we don't have a recurring partner meeting. We don't have a PR team. We don't have in-house counsel. We don't have any of that I think would actually build the institutional filters that would probably keep me in check and keep me from saying dumb shit from time to time and from being mercurial. But at the same time, it would probably keep me from adding a lot of value and being able to act as quickly as we act and get into the opportunities we get into. And so, it's very much a style thing. One of the things that I noticed is, I feel like I grew up at Google a little bit. Like that was one of the places, when you work there for 4 years, you can almost feel like you were raised there a little bit. And Google was a culture of intense debate. I mean, you would sit down at a lunch table and, I don't know if you know this, but they actually had fewer seats than people on purpose. So you were forced to sit side to side. And they didn't have little round tables. They had huge long tables so that, you were always just adjacent to some smart person, right? And so as a result, we would get into these situations and we would say, you talk about anything, whether it was like a product or taxes or social justice. You're surrounded by the smartest people in the world, and they're just constantly peppering you with questions, and you're fighting to defend your position and learning along the way. And it was just culture of rigorous debate. And that is a culture that I think that was a style I learned. It was a style of how to build. It was a style of how to invest. And that's a style I've taken with me, is that if you're in the room, we're going to be talking a lot, and I'm going to be challenging you and calling bullshit. And some of my best friends and the people I work with best call that bullshit right back at me. I brought up Stuart Butterfield. I love Stuart Butterfield. He pushes the envelope of my thinking very, very far. And I feel like I learned hanging out with that guy. Adam Bain, I feel like, really asks tough questions and makes you kind of reconsider some of the bold assertions you've made. And so that's my style. And, I don't think it's a unique style. I think there are other people who are like that. But it's certainly not the only style out there. There are definitely much quieter, much more humble VCs who are much more pensive, who don't fire off angry tweets, who don't call out boards of directors, etc. I admire them. It's just not me.
On that note, Mark wants to know, who's one of the most respected people in the Valley who doesn't really get his or her cred?
So on the investing side, or the entrepreneurial side? So Bill Gurley on the investing side. I mean, Bill is just so anti-self-promotional, and yet, I wish there were an instructional video of Bill Gurley in board meetings. I've been lucky enough to serve on a board with him, and the guy doesn't say 30 words all meeting, but when they do, they're pivotal, they're inspirational, they're high impact. He's just an incredible listener. I feel like all of us could learn from him. His insight is incredible. It's just a really gifted investor and a guy who's doing it right and that I admire. A very different style than mine, but I really admire his style. On the entrepreneurial side, there are a ton of founders. We have great early stage companies that I really admire, but I do think people still don't understand how good Adam Bain is at Twitter. That is a guy who also just lays completely low, gives all credit to the people around him. He is a guy who could be a CEO of a huge company right now. He's chosen to build Twitter, to stay with the team he built there, to work with Jack, who's one of the best people in the world to work with. But keep an eye on Adam Bain. He accomplishes more and does so with a smile than anyone I've ever worked with.
You said a lot about Ryan Graves as well from Uber.
Yeah, I mean, Graves is pure hustle. Like I joke, first of all, Ryan looks like he's, from a cigarette ad in the 1950s, right? He could have co-starred with Ronald Reagan in some of those movies back then. But he also has this unique ability to walk into a garage full of angry Armenian cab drivers and walk out arm in arm with everybody as buddies. I mean, that guy, I don't know if there's anyone in the Valley who has a higher emotional intelligence than Ryan Graves. And so keep an eye on him too. I mean, you're not going to be able to avoid him. He's going to be on every billionaire's list, and deservedly so. That guy left a pretty cush job at GE, drove across the country. His wife had to leave her job as a teacher. He actually stayed at my house in Truckee on his drive out to San Francisco because he didn't really have the money to stay in a hotel anywhere. And it was the start of a beautiful friendship. He's an amazing person. Really admire what he's accomplished over at Uber.
And on that note, tell us about Larry and Sergey a little bit. I know you've had dinners with them recently. You spent 4 years at Google, obviously the alphabet.
Yeah, so Larry and Sergey are intimidatingly bright. Sergey is an incredible communicator. He's very witty. I don't know if it often comes across the stage because he pulls back, but he's legitimately funny. Like, that guy could do a little bit of stand-up. That was one of the reasons why I think he and Robin Williams became such close pals was Sergey's bright, and he's a good salesperson too. So I actually feel working with those guys, I was able to pick up and learn a little bit from Sergey. Larry is an alien who's been sent to us from the future. He just truly sees ahead. And it's really hard to be around him when he's in that mode sometimes, because it's just, the future is so obvious to him that he has a hard time not being dismissive. He works hard at it, but he has a hard time not being dismissive. Like, the one reason you could get laughed out of the room with Larry is if you come with an idea that's too small or too present tense. And so you have to go to Larry and say, all right, how much bigger could this be? Like, how are people actually going to be accessing the internet in the future? What will this, I mean, I remember, an example was we were looking once at doing something like a TiVo business. And the team was pitching like, okay, so if we had this set-top box, what would it be like? And this is, I mean, I'm sure this project is long gone. It was like 2005, 2006 kind of thing. And so somebody had modeled out a few $100 million for marketing in the first year and a few $100 million in the second year and maybe $1 billion in the third year. And so Larry's just like, Chris, how many addresses are there in the United States? And I'm like, I don't know, give me a second. Looks like, 70 million addresses. And he's just like, so what would it cost to send one of these boxes to every address in the United States of America? And he's just like, you know what? That would only cost $400 million in our marketing campaign. That would probably have a 15% take rate. So let's just send one of these to everyone in America. And your head just kind of explodes, because who has the balls to do something like that? I ran the Spectrum group. We were doing all this wireless Spectrum stuff. And at one point, the idea came up. One of the guys on my team came up with the idea to bid $4.7 billion in this FCC auction in exchange for the FCC putting these openness rules on the spectrum. And Larry just immediately was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And Eric is like, that's one of the biggest hands of poker that will ever be played on the planet. $4.7 billion bluff. And Larry's like, yeah, great, perfect, move on. And that was it. I mean, just at what company in the world can you go ahead and commit $4.7 billion for some wireless spectrum? So, I mean, I'll say though, it was fascinating how, I was there when Larry said we needed to buy Android. And I don't think anyone in the room, maybe other than Andy Rubin, actually believed how important an acquisition that would be. But Larry could just see that ultimately the interface for these devices might obviate search. And we're starting to see that happen now. So he's just so far ahead on that stuff.
Yeah. This question is from Melissa. You've accomplished so much, in your career. What motivates you now? What do you do when you win? What guides you? Where's your company?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a cliche, but I have an amazing wife, Crystal, and 3 kids now. I have 3 kids under 4. So they're a huge motivation. You'll sometimes see us do the stock report on Periscope. Today was a sad, I recorded a personal stock report for the team at Twitter that I sent them, CC11, and I sat down and recorded, it bounced off the bottoms of the after hours yesterday, but my kids mean the world to me right now. That said, I also just love having impact. And like I said, I like getting back involved with founders who I think are changing things for the good. A great example, my favorite company right now, and the only board I actually sit on, is InVenture, a founder named Shivani Saroya. Shivani she's an econometrist. She's just one of the smartest people I've ever worked with, period. She taught herself how to code. When I asked her, I was like, who coded this? She's like, I did. And I looked at her resume. I'm like, you're not a computer scientist. She's like, Chris, come on. It's not that hard. And it was just totally amazing. So she taught herself how to code, by the way, like at nights while she was working in an investment bank. Her bosses used to say, why aren't you going out for drinks with all the other young iBankers? She's like, oh, I'm just catching up on work. Meanwhile, she's on GitHub and literally teaching herself how to write code so she could build her first apps. Amazing. But InVenture has built an app that when you download it to your phone in the developing world, Kenya, Tanzania, places like that, you instantly get a credit rating and an instant mobile money loan. And the repayment rates on those loans are higher than any FICO-based loan in the United States. So these are people who may not even have a permanent address, and yet Shivani has figured out by looking at a variety of signals how creditworthy they are. It's an incredible business that's not only making money, but it's having a huge impact on the people there who don't have any access to a credit system. And prevailing interest rates in the black market in Kenya are around 350 to 500%. And so you want to grow your business, you want to finance school, it's an impossibility. Within venture, people are able to grow those businesses, go to school. The letters that company gets are unlike anything I've ever seen. And so I feel great about Shivani as a founder. I feel great about the impact her company is having. I feel great about the fact it's going to be one of our highest performing investments ever. And the other thing I would actually point out, by the way, is it's an amazing company to visit. And I think that's reflective of, if you look at their page and who works there, it's absolutely the most racially diverse company I've ever seen in tech. So that's the kind of thing that gets me fired up in the morning still about doing this job, and gets me coming to work just all stoked.
And Shivani is one of the nicest people I know.
Yeah, she's talking about understated. She's a killer.
Eric Willis asks, how does Mazio most compliment you as an investor? What's a weakness that he makes up for, or besides his stunning good looks, obviously?
Yeah, Mazio's hair. That was right at the top of the list. So going back to the culture of rigorous debate. So I originally met Mazio, let's see, maybe 2006 at South by Southwest.
Jam session.
It was a jam sesh, late night jam sesh. Gary V's hotel room at like the Marriott or something like that. There was like, 15 dudes all crammed into his room, sitting on top of each other, basically debating ideas. And it was funny. We were all sober. It wasn't like a big drinking day. It was just, we were just drunk with ideas. Everyone was challenging each other. And at that time, we weren't actually all that tight yet. I knew Gary, but I didn't know him that well. And I, but there were other guys in that room, by the way. Let me say, it was like, Travis Kalanick was there. Garrett Camp was there. Owen Brainerd, from Brainerd Capital, who's like now the wealth manager to pretty much all of the young Turks in Silicon Valley. He was in the room that night. MSG was in the room that night. I think Tim Ferriss might have been there, but definitely Gary and AJ Vaynerchuk. And then there was this guy, Matt Mazio, who was pretty well groomed for a startup guy. We all kind of looked at him and were like, he can't be from the SF scene. He's not burly enough. But sure enough, he was a very well manscaped agent from Hollywood who would have been easy to dismiss out of pocket. But every time an idea came up, he knew 2 or 3 companies that were working on that. He had already thought through the idea, and we were like, who the hell is this guy? We were resistant to let him into our secret club, I think, in a little, but he just kept earning his way in with all his smart thoughts. So I stayed in touch with him. He was generally the liaison between the entertainment and media worlds in Silicon Valley. And so when no one else was paying attention to Instagram, he was bringing talent up to Instagram and making sure they were connected. When no one else was paying attention to YouTube, he quite literally signed the first YouTube stars as his clients. I mean, Michelle Phan was literally one of his first clients. Phil DeFranco, Funny or Die. Nobody at CAA had ever signed a tech company, and he's signing Funny or Die. And so he was a pioneer in this space. And ultimately, what I realized was, I'm now 40, and so I brought Matt on a few years ago. I realized, as a 37-year-old who's married, doing pretty well for himself, and living in a rural area, I am not a great filter for which ideas are going to be the best ideas all the time, because some of these things don't apply to me. I have never swiped left or right. I am incredibly happily married, right? When Matt and I sit in an Uber side by side, I look at how he uses his phone and it cracks me up. I mean, he boxers with people, and he's wicked with GIFs and emojis. He's just got a really fast emoji finger, a lot better than I do. It's like a native language to him. And so, where this plays out is I did a speech once in LA, and the Snapchat guys came up to me after it and were like, we love you. We really want to work with you. We admire your style. We hear the best things. We diligenced you. We'd really love you to get involved. This is pre-benchmark. And I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I've heard you guys, but how do you get past dick pics? And so I kind of left it, and I didn't even tell Mazzy about it for a couple of weeks. And then I was like, he's like, so what do you see that's interesting? I was like, well, I bumped into those Snapchat guys. And he's like, what'd you say? I I was like, I said I didn't quit. And he's like, what the fuck? And so by the time I got back to them, it was too late. But it's he I think can bring, you know, a sense of what products might be worthwhile that I don't have necessarily. I mean, this is a guy who for years has been going to convention centers and watching guys play League of Legends against each other. You know, I mean, he's like an investor in a professional gaming team.
Right.
He's just got all these insights and interests in this space that I've never touched upon. Now that said, I am able to teach him some aspects of the deal making. The deal making is the easier part, by the way. The finding the companies is hard, and the nurturing the companies is the hardest. The deal making is the easy part, but I think we're good sounding boards for each other, and it's been a great partnership. I'll say Matt is better, faster than I ever thought he would be, and that's why on our latest fund, Matt runs it. Matt, you know, I guess I have a veto right on deals at the end of the day, but Matt runs it day to day. We check in every day. He talks about what's on his mind, but Matt is the decision maker on that fund, and our LPs are really impressed with what he's done so far.
Jeff asks, what's the future of Lowercase? Do you keep a lean team? Do you expand in different areas? What's the future?
Yeah, so definitely a lean team. I just think it's an absolute advantage for us. You know, I just got a true full-time assistant. You know, so the team forever was 3 people. It was myself, Matt, and our COO, Serena. So a lot of people don't know, but the operations of Lowercase are run out of the back of a winery in Healdsburg, California, Cartograph Winery. It's an amazing place, but you know, every now and then I'll be on the phone with our COO, and she's like, "Hey, I gotta go pour for a customer walking in." So, you know, Serena's been with us since day one. She's indispensable, incredibly valuable. But I didn't even really have a full-time assistant until 6 weeks ago or something like that. And so just now we're starting to look at the horizon. We're starting, like, we have our first swag, like our very first Lowercase hats just rolled off the presses. I mean, it's funny, we have Lowercase shirts, but they were literally made by a friend on Twitter who heard me complaining that we don't even have Lowercase shirts, and he just literally sent them to my address. So, so we're starting to build a little bit of infrastructure here. That said, I don't want to have a huge investing team. I don't want to have partner meetings. We are not going to be a service and platform model. My aspiration is not to manage empire. My aspiration is to have as much direct impact as I can. Can I foresee hiring somebody? Yes. I made one GP offer to somebody this year, and I asked that person, "Hey, look, come to me with a proposal for what we're missing, what we're not tackling, what stage or what space we're not doing." And that person decided not to pursue that. And I'm not saying their name because I don't want to sell them out because they're doing something else right now. But that said, there are some special people I've worked with that I can imagine wanting to collaborate with. But I have never, you know, but we're not going to have an open head and interview a bunch of people to fill that. I mean, back to Matt, you know, there was no process for hiring Matt. I just was like, I need some help. Matt's the guy. I've known him now for a few years. He kicks ass. I learn from him. He sees stuff I don't see. I'm just going to call him and make him an offer. I didn't even make him the offer in person. I literally did it over the phone. So I think if we ever hire another person, it'll be that same way.
And I'm sorry about rejecting your offer. I just really like Product Hunt, and I think I should stay here for a while.
Dude, we were going to keep it under wraps.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but on that note, before moving on, do you see yourself getting into other causes or other businesses or foundation or nonprofits or other kind of areas?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so first of all, charity water has always been a big focus for myself and my family. I love the work they're doing. I think particularly for a startup community, I've never found a charity that is more that has higher impact with more efficiency and more accountability than charity water. You know, if you donate to charity water, your money literally goes directly into the field and impacts people who are some of the poorest people on the planet who need it desperately. I've traveled with them to Ethiopia a couple times and have seen firsthand what clean water does in a village. The day you turn on that well, the women, you know, stop being raped basically and killed by lions on their way to the well. They start going to school and the children stop dying. And so it's kind of amazing what a few $1,000s can do in an environment like that. So we'll continue our work with charity water. My wife and I have started a foundation and are starting to explore some of the projects we've always wanted to start under that umbrella. There is a book I've started working on that is not a bio or a business book. It's completely random. You wouldn't guess it. I'm sure I'll come by on a book tour and do and put it in the Product Hunt library. And there are a few other things I've got up my sleeves. I mean, I love brick and mortar projects. We have a couple restaurant investments. We make wine. My wife just launched a Scratch and Sniff whiskey book that was a follow-up to her Scratch and Sniff wine book. That was a fun project to be around for. And so I'm always going to have multiple irons in the fire. But I will say, Shark Tank for me has been really, really fun. I have a bunch of episodes this season, and that's something I might look forward to doing in the future too. I lost your audio there.
Sorry. John wants to know, talk about Mark Cuban. What makes him so special? What does he see that other people don't see? Because he's kind of a renegade.
So, I mean, I don't know if it's that he sees things that other people don't see. I just think actually we're very similar in that he just shoots his mouth off a lot, right? I mean, he just has incredibly strong opinions. He's often wrong. And I like the opportunity to be sitting next to him to call him out. We'll see. This is the thing about Shark Tank. Each of those pitches can last anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half. I mean, it is a very long shooting day. And ultimately, they're whittled down to like 8 to 10 minutes of television. And so I don't even know what hit the editing room floor and what is going to make it into this Friday's episode. I'm pretty excited because I remember there were some fiery battles that day. But the privilege of being able to sit next to Cuban and just be like, Mark, you're totally wrong right now. Or Robert, you couldn't sound older. Like there was a point where we were talking about something to do with selfies, and Robert was just like, I don't know why anyone would want all these pictures of themselves. And I'm just like, no. Are you kidding me? You sound like the oldest man I've ever heard. And the ability, I mean, if you watch the show, you scream back at the show, right? So, I mean, you're just like, no, what are you possibly thinking? You'll never make money on that deal. And so to be able to sit there next to them and say that and call them out live has been great. And I'm really hoping a lot of that hits the screen.
I can imagine them judging Dub Smash and just not seeing it.
I mean, there's no doubt. Like, so I've definitely done some deals in the tank now. I can't say exactly which ones. We'll have to watch to find out. But I have done some deals where the fellow sharks were doubters. But I didn't do any deals there to be polite. I do deals to make money. The money I'm investing in the show is my own money. I like money. I want my money to come back to me and bring some friends with it. So I did some deals there that other people didn't believe in so much, but I'm looking forward to them admitting they were wrong.
Ben asks, what's something you used to fervently believe, whether about investing or startups or tech broadly, that you now see as fundamental?
Oh yeah, isn't this Peter Thiel's question or something like that? I used to hate kombucha, now I drink it all day. No, but let's see. While I think about a real answer to this, there's a really funny video clip out there that one of you can probably find where Bloomberg, years ago, whenever the iPad actually launched, Bloomberg asked me to be on all morning long. We're like stationed outside of San Francisco City Hall, and they asked me to be on all morning long and react to the live announcement of the iPad. And I swear I'm sitting there and I say something to the tune of, I mean, look, this device will be good for reading. It'll be good for watching movies. It'll be good for playing games and apps. But beyond that, I just don't see how it could possibly be a big deal. And I don't know what was possibly going through my head that I thought that the world of books, movies, music, games, apps would be somehow solely constrained. But I completely missed early on how pivotal and important tablets would be. So that said, one thing that I think I used to believe, like a real answer, one thing that I think I used to believe that I don't anymore is I used to subscribe to a lot of these people who told you to be humble, that humility was the key to all this stuff. And it's hard because I found that humility is not a natural state for some people. We've all gotten to where we are in our careers at these companies we work for, at these companies we're founding, at these schools we attend, et cetera, because we're really good at something. And so, it's unnatural to pretend that you're not. It's, you're working with some of the best coders and product people in the world. To ask them to be humble is is disingenuous. They're rock stars, they're ninjas, they're whatever cliche term you want to use for it, but they're special. And so one of the things I think I realized was that it's not authentic to be falsely humble. And I don't mean the humble brag. I mean, it's just not authentic to apologize for being kick-ass at some things. Now, where that gets you into trouble is when you feel like you have to pretend to be kick-ass at things you're not. And so I have this code I live by called bold humility, which is, don't apologize for the things that you're the very best in the world at, but know where that line stops and where you need help, and be quick and accommodating and asking for help with that kind of stuff. And that's one of the things that I think makes us, the most effective leaders. There was a time at Google, at Google, all of the notes from every meeting are published to the whole company. And so whatever happens in a meeting, everyone in the whole company can see. It's kind of intimidating, right? Because you'll have, just like there are subscribers to this live chat, there are literally subscribers to every meeting there. And so I was in a meeting once with my wireless team talking about something, and my partner in the group wrote, Chris doesn't know what to do here. He has no idea what to do. And those notes got out before I reviewed them. And Larry Page was a subscriber to my team's meeting notes. I'm like, what the hell? I went to her, I'm like, you screwed me. You ruined my career. Everyone's gonna know. I don't know what the hell's going on here. And the very next meeting, I'm gonna say like a half dozen people who didn't report to me at all showed up because they knew how to be helpful in finding the answer to the question I couldn't find the answer to. And at the meeting after that, Larry Page himself chose to come to our meeting and hang out. And I was like, holy shit. By showing some vulnerability here and showing that I needed some help, I actually gained more power and attracted more people to be helpful to me. And so to kind of bring all that together, it's that I think these books that teach you one business attitude or the other are kind of misguided. I think that the candor is what will actually be the allure, the magnet, and the draw for talent to be around you. And I think that'll be what's most effective. Don't apologize for being kick-ass, but admit when you need help.
And on that note, Google, Twitter, Uber, Instagram. What's the moment in your career that you are the most proud of, or that you remember with the most fondness?
The moment with the let's categorize them, because there's a ton of those. I mean, I remember getting the Founders Award at Google really early on when I was hired there. My original title was corporate counsel, and yet I was hired to go buy and build data centers. They needed to call me a lawyer so that I could sign my own contracts, and the work we were doing was incredible. It was kind of confidential. I couldn't tell most people I worked at Google. I had to carry my Salinger Group business card and drive around the Pacific Northwest looking for places to spend $1 billion. And so it was an incredible, incredible time. But ultimately getting the Founders Award, which is the highest recognition you could get from those guys, was an endorsement that, you're never quite sure where you stand with Larry and Sergey, particularly as a non-legendary engineer. And so to get the endorsement for those guys that I was kicking ass meant a whole lot to me. I finally felt like I belonged there and belonged in Silicon Valley. I think one of my proudest moments was, there were certain investors around the Twitter boardroom, not just the most recent board, but back when Ev was CEO and he was fired, there were some investors there who didn't like me very much and who really didn't want me to buy big parts of the company. And at the time I managed a relatively small amount of money. I think I probably had $100 million under management total across all my funds. And so when I went out and raised, the fabled gazillion dollars over the next, month and change, I just came over top of these guys. They just totally underestimated me, and there was nothing they could do about it. So when somebody wanted to sell a huge chunk of the company, like 10% of the company at the time, there was nobody else who could bid on it. There was nobody else who could buy it. It was a one-person market, and I just outplayed them. And I was really proud of that because I did it from my 3-bedroom house in Truckee. I did it wearing cowboy shirts and just pacing around the house on the phone. I did it taking powder days off to ski still. and nobody saw it coming. And so that to me was just as an entrepreneur, which I would consider myself like in starting Lowercase. That was a day where I was just like, fuck these guys. They have no idea what's coming. I'm going to make this work. And I had no business raising that kind of money from that place without a massive institution, without even a mailing address. Like I didn't have an office for anyone to visit. When they flew into Truckee, I met him at the Greasy Spoon Diner in downtown Truckee. I just had so much conviction and knew that the success of Twitter and the success of Lowercase would be inevitable, that it was irresistible. And that was a proud moment for me. Was, like, yes, I'm glad we made all this money. That was fantastic too. But just, God, I fucking love being underestimated.
Mm-hmm. When you think of, heroes and role models in your own life, when you think of the term fulfilled, who comes to mind and why?
Fulfilled. My wife is one of those people. My wife is just wickedly talented. She was an award-winning ad creative who wrote, like Super Bowl type commercials and stuff like that. She's got a shelf full of awards for that kind of stuff. She's a kickboxer. She's a yoga instructor. She's a power mama to 3 incredible girls and stuff. Like she just is so happy. Like her smile is just so much calmer than mine, and she has such an inner peace that I really look up to her as a source of, I would like to be more like her. I think one of the biggest journeys in all of our lives is the journey from external validation to internal validation. You grow up and your parents are there, approving you, the things you're doing, encouraging you, giving you the hugs and the high fives and judging your grades. And you've got teachers along the way who have your best interest at heart. You've got coaches if you're playing sports, professors, and then you get out into this corporate world and suddenly, yes, there are nice people who want to take you under their wing a little bit, but their scorecard isn't your scorecard. And suddenly you're kind of on your own. And I think a lot of us, and me, I definitely scrambled to try and win the approval of a bunch of people around me, people I worked with, big names in the industry. And I lost sight of how much I needed to live for myself and actually have my own internal validation. And that's something that when I see that in other people, I'm really drawn to it. You can just tell the peace in their soul. And so that's what, I think my wife embodies that.
Yeah. I'm going to open it up to the audience in a couple minutes. But a couple last questions. One, you have this piece in the Tim Ferriss podcast where the story where you're passing notes to a girl, and she says, kind of, what do you envision for your life? And you say that by 40 you're going to be a billionaire, and you don't know what you're going to be doing, but you're going to be kind of on phone calls negotiating deals. And lo and behold, here we are. What would that self, say to yourself today?
So give me 1 second. I'm actually just going to see if I have. I don't know if I have that notebook here in this room. I don't think I do. I was going to show you. Yeah. So the story is. I was in Ireland supposedly paying attention to, I went to school there for a while, and I was supposedly paying attention to like a film class or something. And this girl from Maine, who was also an exchange student, we would flirt by writing questions back and forth in a notebook. And so I'd write out 10 questions and she'd answer them and write out 10 more questions. And I'd answer them back and forth, back and forth. And so at one point she says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I say something to the effect of, and it's a bummer, I think I must have it somewhere else in my notebook, but I say something to the effect of, I don't know what the job is called, but I know it's going to involve a lot of talking on the phone, a lot of negotiations, a lot of yelling at people, a lot of high stakes, high risk, high reward. I'm going to be able to do it from wherever I want, probably half time from the mountains, half time from the beach, and whatever it is, I'm going to be done doing it by the time I'm 40. And so 2 years ago, my wife and I found that in my garage, and our jaws dropped because I described basically what I do for a living, and I live half the time up in Tahoe and half the time down on the beach in LA. And I just turned 40 in May, and I had this moment where I was like, holy shit, what am I doing here? And so that was prophetic. Like literally foreseeing that I was going to do a job I didn't even know existed was pretty fun. So yeah, anyway, that was pretty, what was the second half of your question though?
I don't remember, but I have a better one.
Okay, good. Let's do it.
Before opening the audience, it's a legacy question.
Okay.
Broadly, what do you want people What do you want to be known for? What do you want people to say at your funeral?
Dude, are you guys planning that already? That's brutal.
DiMaggio Coupe.
Yeah, no, it's I wouldn't put it past him. So it's I'm working on that. So, and I think part of that is just, I went to college in Washington D.C. and I did not want to come out as a Democrat or Republican at the time, because I thought if I did so, I would kind of offend half of my potential employers. I didn't feel like I had the freedom to be as honest and candid as I wanted to be back then. Later I went to Google, and I felt like I didn't always say what I wanted to say on stage because there'd be hell to pay with the PR team, or I was speaking on behalf of a company. It took me a long time to kind of get deprogrammed to where I would do an interview or do something like this and just be able to answer authentically because I don't have a boss to respond to. And there's certainly been something kind of liberating about getting to this place where I'm never going to have to apply for a job again. And so I think for me, it's been this whole exercise in candor and authenticity. And now that I'm there, it's an exercise. It's a constant exercise. Is how candid can I be? How honest can I be? But now that I'm there and working on it so much, I'm hoping that I can reintroduce that as a core value in what we build and how we do this. Whether it's encouraging people to talk more about the personal challenges of what we do for a living, about relationships and about mental health, whether it's not being afraid to tweet about how stupid guns are, even though I know every time I do, I lose 1,000 followers. It's about being one of Obama's largest fundraisers last year, and yet coming out as a huge supporter of Edward Snowden, and suddenly having the White House no longer return my phone calls. It's just about trying to be the most authentic person possible, and if I can hopefully keep working on that myself, but inspire other people to be that way, and maybe really bring that forward as a core value in what we all do, then I would be very proud.
Excellent. It's an amazing answer. Okay, we're going to take a couple questions from the community. Adam.
This is cool.
For doing this chat, I watched your Periscope with Peter Pham a couple of months ago. I'm really curious about it's really dark in here. I'm really curious about your concept. You talk a lot about creating value before you ask for value, and you're really big into the whole karma thing, which I am too. And I'm curious about what kind of value do you like seeing from new founders for them to create for other people within the community before they go asking, for a pitch or for an intro or something like that?
Yeah. Hey, Adam, first of all, thanks. I see you in my reply stream a lot, so it's cool to see you actually in person, even in a dark room. That's pretty cool. So you're referring to that podcast I had with Peter Pham, where it was Periscope, it was pre-landscape, and so you saw like half of each of our faces.
That was
It's hilarious. But pre-landscape, in order to do like two guys periscoping, you had to sit in each other's laps, basically. So anyway, I am a big believer in create value before you ask for value back. And Mazzio is a great example of that. That guy had been helpful to me before we had any formal business relationship. He had helped me help my companies navigating Hollywood and the content business and some of the new native video advertising formats and stuff like that. And so, like I said, when it came to hiring him, there wasn't an interview process. He'd already just proven value to me. It was a matter of just like making the arrangements formal. There's a guy named Adam Bezvanik who was like our first associate and intern at Lowercase while he was in business school. And I didn't put up a huge rec. I just saw that guy adding value in my reply stream every single day. He was highlighting companies I should see. He was bringing news to my attention that I might have missed otherwise. And so when it came time to, when I realized I needed a business school type dude to do some modeling for me on a project, I just There was, again, no interview or anything. I was just like, hey, Adam, I'd love for you to work on this, because I knew what he was doing. I think that particularly for people trying to break into the scene, showing up and being helpful, whether it's just walking into a hack event, hanging out and a gathering, a social event, like lurking on on Product Hunt and on YC News or Hacker News, and just generally being thoughtful and helpful, they'll just find there aren't actually that many people putting in the work to do that. It seems obvious, but it takes some real hustle, and there aren't that many people putting in the work to do that. And if you do it, good things will come. Cool?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, right on, Adam. We'll see you.
Thank you, Chris. I know I want to respect your time, and it's 10:01. Do you got to run right now?
I'm good to go. I have.
Okay.
I am literally. I'm gonna go tape. Okay, here. I want a question from. I want suggestions from your audience. Actually, you ready?
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
I am going to tape NPR Marketplace. They play this tech game where the host and the guest throw numbers at each other, and they'll say, like, I've got a number 17, and then the host has to guess what 17 is, and then you tell them what it is related to tech. So I need some numbers. I didn't actually do my homework. I was busy at a whiskey tasting party last night, celebrating my wife's book, and so I'm totally, the dog ate my homework. So which numbers do you think, like, I would say the number, and then what would be the big reveal for it? What do you think? Yeah, 42. I get it. Yes, the secret to the universe. The chat room is hilarious right now. Oh, the Google share buyback number. That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay. What else? How many employees Instagram had when they sold for? Well, they didn't even sell for $1 billion. I wish we would have gotten $1 billion. We got 700 million. Well, depending on how long you held your stock for. Obviously 140. Yeah, okay. You guys are good, man. You got any, Eric? What do you think?
Am I in this?
There's a good ones. 140 could be good.
Yeah, that's really good. All right. What's
Perfect.
What's 52 billion? The value of Uber? Is that what people are saying?
Oh my God.
Yeah, Saba just said this chat is on fire. It is.
Perfect. We'll take a couple more.
Yeah.
Jacob, he's been hustling his ass off this whole chat, calling in. So I want to give him respect. Jacob, you have ask a question.
Cool, thanks, Eric. My question is just about Evan Williams. I know you've already been talking about a little bit this chat, but he's like one of the entrepreneurs I admire most, and I kind of aspire to kind of be like him. So I know you've worked a lot with him through Twitter, a bunch of that stuff. So like, what are the 2 or 3 things that you notice most about Evan that really makes him an amazing entrepreneur?
Yeah, sure. And thanks, man, for all the hustle to get into this chat. It sounds like you've been sweating it over there. Nice. Where are you calling from, by the way?
Toronto.
I heard that in your voice. You sound like a hockey commentator. I grew up. This is gonna sound very Sarah Palin, but you could see Toronto from my house that I grew up in. I could see the CN Tower.
You're from Buffalo, right?
Like near Lockport, near Niagara Falls. So I could literally look across and see. So I grew up with like the Uncle Bobby show and CFNY and like going to Ontario Place. So my band actually played a couple of gigs up there. I even liked the Bare Naked Ladies before they sold out. So anyway, I could just hear it. I could hear you're in my tribe. So you're right to admire Evan Williams. He's one of the most gifted entrepreneurs of all time. And anytime you get a chance to dive into that guy's biography, I mean, he literally grew up in the middle of Clark, Nebraska. It's nowhere in Nebraska. to be seen as the potential CEO of a public company was that, when you go public, you got to have this mix of your product and operational skills, but you got to have some polish. You got to be able to speak publicly and compellingly and shine your answers a little bit. And that's just not F's style. And so he, to me, is the epitome of the heads down, hardworking CEO. I mean, last night, he texted me somewhere around midnight because he couldn't make it to this whiskey party. And he's just like, sorry, dude, I'm heads down in the medium mines right now. And you're just like, that's it. Like, that guy is a billionaire a few times over, could go home at 5 if he wanted. And yet he's still at work hustling, like cranking out medium stuff because he's so damn passionate about it. So, so you're right to admire him. I think it's a good choice.
Is there any particular, piece that you think I should look at so I can learn more about it? I've watched like almost all of his stuff, but is there any one that you'd recommend? I
don't know. I mean, I actually interviewed him one time at the Summit series in Lake Tahoe. I'm not sure if they ever posted that, but check around. Like that was really fun to be able to interview one of my best friends, and particularly because I knew a lot about his bio and stuff. But
cool,
yeah, cheers. Good luck, man.
Thanks, Jacob. Neve, I'm going to call you next.
Neve.
Product Hunt office.
Wait, where are you? You're in the Product Hunt office?
Yeah.
Oh, strong.
Oh yeah, I got a new gig.
Congratulations, dude.
Thank you, and thank you for the what we talked about a few weeks ago. That meant a lot.
Cool.
Anyway, so you have a friend in Russia that's kind of famous, and I was wondering what was like interviewing Ed Snowden.
Oh yeah, you got the screenshot there. I consider that a privilege. I think Edward Snowden's a patriot of the highest order. I think that guy was literally willing to trade, maybe not his physical life. I don't think he ever thought he was at risk of being physically killed, but his freedom as we know it, I think he was willing to trade to expose the systematic violation of our constitutional rights, and continued lying by the executive branch about it. I mean, our entire country is founded upon these notions that this balance of power, that the executive branch will be kept in check by the judicial and the legislative branch. But when one of those branches is just persistently lying to the other two, and lying to the American public, then the system breaks down. Like, I believe there are things that not all of us should know, that there are bad guys out there that need to be tracked in secrecy, that there are plots that need to be foiled from time to time, that there are things by their nature, if they were known, would destabilize our information advantage. And for that, we have secret committees of Congress, and we have secret courts who are able to deal with clandestine services in the executive branch. But when the secret committees in Congress admit they've been lied to over and over again, and there's lying going on in the public hearings, and when the special FISA court that they have, the judiciary branch, comes out and says, despite the fact that we approve over 99% of these requests, we've been lied to too, then the United States is breaking down, that what we have here isn't actually working. And so for me to see someone willing to risk everything they have, and I don't think he particularly enjoys Russia. It certainly wasn't his original ambition to end up there. And he's facing, certainly right now, I mean, there is no whistleblower exemption to the laws he broke, and so he's facing treason charges. I don't see any president being willing to pardon him anytime soon. And so that's a guy who gave up his entire life. And it's funny that he can still be revered as a criminal, even though we've had some legislative reform as a result of his disclosures. And so it's pretty messed up. Now, that said, let me tell a story in fairness. So last year, I was doing a fundraising roundtable with the president. We had this series of these roundtables where the president would come in, and if you gave enough money and you were also a tech leader, you could sit 20 people around a table with the president, and it was unfiltered Q&A for like an hour and a half. It was amazing. I mean, just that experience. And I got to sit in 8 or 10 of those and kind of moderate them. And so one of the early ones, I saw everyone kind of not asking real questions. They were like, hey, can you help me on this intellectual property export law? Or, just kind of bullshit, like provincial questions. And I was like, we have the leader of the free world right here. So I asked them, hey, Mr. President, I've lived abroad. I've been outside the United States, and people would tease us for like eating too much and driving too big cars and burning too much gasoline. And fair point. But the thing I was always proudest about as an American is that we have true social mobility in our country, and we have the most transparent, accountable justice system in the world. It's like growing up, that's what I always felt. I was like, fast forward to today, and the data are clear that we don't have the social mobility that we used to. If you're poor, overweight, and Black, you're going to likely stay poor, overweight, and Black because of a digital divide, nutritional divide. We have food deserts in these neighborhoods. We have the justice divide. Look at what's happening with incarceration rates and death row. And I was just like, and so we don't have that mobility that we used to. And we've like suspended habeas corpus. We have warrantless wiretapping. This is even pre-Snowden declarations. I said, and I brought up Guantanamo. I'm like, we have 100+ guys sitting in Guantanamo without any actual due process. And so I said, so if we don't have social mobility and we don't have transparent, accountable justice, what does America stand for? And the rest of the table was like, oh no, you didn't. Like you just asked the president. Like, it was just like, oh shit, it's about to get real. But I meant it. I was just like, so do we just stand for, capital availability? Do we just stand for the best place to start your startup? Is that it? And so he took a shot at answering it, but it felt like a campaign speech a little bit. And, and he kind of said at one point, like, hey, in America, you can be anything you want to be. And I was like, Mr. President, I'm sorry to interrupt you. And by the way, interrupting a president is not something I would advise any of you do. But he said, you can be anything you want to be in America. And I'm like, not exactly, man. The data aren't clear there. And so he kind of tried to go with the question, and then he kind of veered off and answered a couple other questions. And at the end, he was supposed to circle the room and do portraits with everybody. And instead, he walked back over to me, and he came up to me, and I'm not an actor, so I'm not going to do this to the most amazing justice, but he basically walks up to me and he said, he says, hey, Chris, good question. We currently have, and I'm going to make this number up, it was something like 126 guys in Guantanamo. He's like, intelligence tells us that, 101 of those guys, if they were repatriated to their countries, tried and found innocent and set free, probably wouldn't present a clear and present danger to the United States. And so we're convinced they're bad guys, but if they were set free, probably wouldn't present a clear and present danger to the United States. So that means there are 25, and again, these are just round numbers, but there are 25 guys in Guantanamo who both have the will and the capability to destroy thousands of American lives. And then he reaches out and he puts his arm on my shoulder and is like, so what's your suggestion? And I was just like, holy shit, you have the worst job in the world, right? So it was fascinating. Like these are easy things to debate from the armchair. There's certainly easy issues to debate, but in that moment, your mettle is tested. Now we have the benefit from the Snowden stuff of knowing that no one, not in even the Chelsea Manning trials, has anyone been able to show that anyone's life was risked by the information disclosed. Sure, a lot of people are embarrassed, and particularly the liars, but there hasn't been a single death, there hasn't been a single injury that can be linked to any of these disclosures and stuff like that. So it's actually been a little bit easier. But I think the more you really chew on these issues, and the more you really think about them, I have found that when you're young, what a professor of mine in college, Otto Hentz, used to say is like, you come in as a table pounding freshman. You're just like, this is the way it is. Everything's very black and white. And if you've really pushed hard in college, you've learned to wrestle with nuance and think hard about the fact that there's a lot of gray areas and things. You've really started to wrestle with questions. Not everything's always so obvious. But I found in my experience, as I get older, as I have the freedom, I think, to be more authentic, to be more honest with myself and an assortment of diverse life experiences, I start to come more and more to the conclusion that a lot of things are black and white. And then when it comes to the United States of America, the actual core principles, not the bullshit framer, fucking misinterpreted bullshit that comes from the fundamentalist Tea Partyists, but the core notion of the fact that a government by the people has to be, for the people, for the benefit of the people, and is built to be with power distributed among these three branches, that when that's subverted, you've literally undermined the entire thing that the United States stands for. And so that's why I consider Edward Snowden to be a person I admire, and that I think is worthy of the respect and admiration of most people. By the way, the basis for that chat I had with him is that I am interviewing him on stage for a Summit Series event in November, and that was awesome. So we were supposed to do an hour prep, and it went for 3 hours. And he did say, like, assume that every moment of this is being listened to, and probably every moment of everything you do after this will be listened to. Like, any list you're not already on, you're definitely on now. And so that's always funny, knowing that you're at least playing to an audience of plus a few more. So what an experience, though. You're on mute.
Is there a non-zero chance that you run for office someday?
No, it's a zero chance. I don't ever want to be. I don't want people to know where I live. I don't want to feel like I owe anything to the general populace. I feel like that trade-off is really hard to make when you've got kids and family. Privacy is something I work extremely hard to protect. It may not seem like it because I'm tweeting a lot, but I'm very thoughtful about, am I letting people know where I am or what I'm going or what I'm doing? It's very, very thoughtful. And I think once you go for office, everybody owns a piece of you. And I don't want to do that. And I really want to pick and choose the things that I think are where I can be most helpful. I think right now, we found legislative bodies to be generally ineffective. And so I'd like to be involved in the layer that can hopefully influence those agendas. Here's the funny thing. You think about the power of the NRA. The NRA is powerful because they can contribute money to politicians to buy ads. Well, now we've got this platform that influences people's behavior without having to spend any money on it. Like, that's how we won on the SOPA issue. And I think if we progressives generally start to learn how to use these tools better, we can completely disintermediate the really fucked up campaign finance system and start to achieve some of the policy stuff we want. So I would much rather work on the tools and the behavioral economics and the social understandings than throw my hat into that really, really perverse, conflicted, biased, dysfunctional realm of the legislature.
So what do you think about the 2016 elections? And if you had a whole day with the next coming president, what would you talk?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to sit this election out in terms of contributions at this point. I think for me, I don't think this country can afford to have a Donald Trump or a Ben Carson. And so if that ever seemed like it were getting close to being reality, I would jump in and do what I had to do to help. That said, I've been just disappointed by with one exception, the across the board dismissal of Edward Snowden, and the unwillingness to admit that he's actually done some brave, bold things that have made America stronger in the end. And so that's like I said, that cost me my relationship with the current administration. And I think that's the thing that will keep me on the sidelines for this election, unless we get into a really emergency situation. We can't afford to have one of these Republican bombasts from the country.
So I'll take one more question, unless Chris overrides me and wants to take more, just to respect his time.
One more is good. I got to go to this NPR thing.
Perfect. Adam, you've been hitting me all day as well. Take it away.
Strong hat and beard there in the avatar.
Where do you think he's from?
It's not LA, like, I don't know, Seattle maybe?
He does look like a very fashionable guy. Adam, you have like 10 seconds.
He's hanging. There he is.
Cool.
No, that didn't work. No, I only see Eric.
Okay. If Adam, one last try. If this doesn't work, I'm going to try the other person who's been hitting me.
There you go. You got to solve the mystery. Where are you from, Adam?
From Pasadena, California.
Oh shit, a neighbor. Right on. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Thanks for taking the time again to do this. And I'm intrigued by the interior lives of people with influence. And so I'd love for you to talk about a time that you've experienced awe.
A time that I've experienced awe. I mean, there's the cliched answer of like holding your kids, you know, and watching your wife, you know, scale, you know, like basically grow your family unit by 50% in one day. So that's certainly like an unforgettable high impact moment. Awe for me, I mean, there are a lot of these. You know, I've been an athlete and I've watched people whose physical performance or their bravery blows my mind, in the extreme skiing world and in cycling and stuff. But I think awe for me is seeing the will and determination to survive that I've encountered in northern Ethiopia and Tigray. The women there who, and even young girls who wake up before it's light and carry huge 40-pound jerry cans, often one on their back and one in each hand, full of water so that their kids can drink water and their family can eat. There's a video on the Charity Water website way back in the day where we've been driving from village to village, you know, dedicating wells and meeting these people. And at one point I turned to Scott Harrison and I said, hey, why don't we try and carry some of these things? And he's, you know, and the local guides were like, no, that's dangerous. It's dangerous. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? We're like a bunch of healthy dudes. We should be able to pick these things up and carry them. And they were like, I don't think that's a good idea. And so sure enough, we strapped these things on. We each had to carry one jerry can, not three. It like is the norm. And we got our asses kicked. We were falling over. They were spilling, they were hurting our backs, like we got blisters, and we carried them, I think, maybe a mile and a half versus, you know, some of these women go 3 hours each way. And so I was just completely in awe of the will it takes and the selflessness it takes for these women to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why Charity Water will be in our hearts forever and why I'm so proud of the work they do. So.
That's awesome. Thanks for the
opportunity. Right on, Eric, you're muted, brother.
Thank you, Chris, for the best product on live chat we've ever had. I'll let you go. Where can people, last minute plugs, where can people find Shark Tank? Where can they find you? You know, say last words to our audience.
Yeah, look, man, World Series baseball is highly overrated. I just heard we're going to be competing with the World Series on Friday. So, but ABC at 9 Eastern, 9 Pacific, it's super fun. So I am going to be doing an obscene amount of social media around this. I'm going to be periscoping some, live tweeting some, doing a Periscope wrap up. There may or may not be a Q&A tool that I may or may not able to disclose I get to use at this point. But I'm going to be doing a lot. For me to be at Shark Tank was fun. To be behind the scenes was great. I'm really excited to talk about the dynamics of what was happening on and off the camera. And so I think it'll be hopefully a really fun interactive experience, and maybe you can pick up on a lot of the joy and passion I had for it. So looks forward to seeing you guys Friday.
Perfect. Everyone give a huge round of applause to Chris for joining us and taking
I love the applause.
Yeah.
Right on.
Oh, it's coming.
Thanks, everybody. That was super awesome. All right, bye.
And thank you, everybody, for joining. This was incredible. Thank you for all your questions. This was probably the best live chat we've ever had. So thanks, everybody. And give it up for the people who made this happen on our end. Lucas, Andreas, Mike, Coralie, Ryan, Neve, Ayrton, the rest of the Product Hunt team. That was incredible. And what a gift for all of us to be able to chat with amazing people. And look forward to more. Dave Morin was supposed to go right now, but we rescheduled him, and we will have more guests starting tomorrow. So, and thank you to the whole Blab team. Sean, this was incredible. Okay, over and out. Bye, everybody.